Uh, I want you all to open your bills of exchange ordinance as well, because along with the dude, we'll be discussing about certain sections of the bills of exchange ordinance at the same time, because this is a particular area where you have to go hand in hand with the specific clauses, right? Continuing from last week, we discussed about last week about the whole concept of the evolution of bills of exchange, then the concepts, why we, that is in circulation now, why is it so popular even at today's age, over a century now it has been in use. And then we also talked about its origin in England, as well as the influence of England to Sri Lanka, and the works done by Sir Mackenzie Chalmers, as well as the Bills of Exchange Act in 1927 in England, 1890s, and thereafter the Bills of Exchange Ordinance in Sri Lanka, a couple of decades after the enactment of the Bills of Exchange Act in the UK in 1882, right? Now, what we'll be discussing today, and you would of course remember about the definition that we spoke about the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, as well as the criterion, so to speak, the criterion that is required in order for a particular instrument to be regarded as a bill of exchange, right? Section number 3. It's an unconditional order in writing addressed by one party to another. I think you can recall this, right? Addressed by one party to another, signed by the person who is giving it, right? Requiring the person to whom it is addressed to pay on demand or at a fixed determinable future time as some certain in money to or to the order of a specified person or to the bearer. So this you need to have that maybe by heart if you require, but over a period of time of usage you will remember. That is the level of knowledge that you need to keep in mind, especially for the exam as well as for your day-to-day professional lives. Why I'm saying this, as I told during the last week, it's not only knowing the words of this particular definition that is required. What is required is your understanding. We spent quite a bit of time on understanding and comprehending the background and the effect of this whole section on definition last week. So keep that in mind, which is quite important. And now, today, we will be continuing from there, and keep in mind, I am not going to proceed in accordance with the sections of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. What I will be doing is I will be touching upon certain topics where, and I will refer to the particular section. So what I require from you all is to turn to that particular section, and then we will discuss about it and understand the periphery and the background that we require in order to understand the legal effect of such requirements. So I'm drawing your attention, turn to section 22 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. What does section 22 provides? Section 22 provides for the capacity of the parties. You would recall previously when you discussed about the contracts, the law of contracts, and so on and so forth, there are certain requirements for a particular contract to be enforced or to be legally enforceable. Certain ingredients needs to be fulfilled. What are these ingredients? If you can recall, for a contract to be enforced, a legally binding contract, there are certain ingredients that needs to be fulfilled. So, what are these ingredients? If you can list them down. One is capacity of the parties. What are the others? You have done this. What else? Agreement between two or more persons, yes. Others? Legality, yes. Others, there is quite a lot in the class. More you participate in the class, more you will understand. Otherwise, this is an area which is perceived to be complex. True consent, yes. Consent of the parties, agreement, legality, intention of the parties. What else? Come on. Then make a keynote. These are basics that I'm asking. Justa causa, quite interesting. Yes. Good. True consent, yeah. What are the others? Formation. So the parties should have the capacity to enter into a contract. There should be consent of both parties. So maybe the agreement. There should be an offer. Remember, these are the basic. There should be an offer. There should be an offer. Then there should be an acceptance on the parties. Offer and acceptance. Consideration. Then you would have spoken about valuable consideration. Consideration valuable consideration. It goes from there onwards. We call that agana pratishtava, right? Then capacity of the parties again plays a huge role on this. We are going to discuss how the capacity of the parties applies or affects the bills of exchange ordinance. So section 22(1) you would see, right? Capacity to incur liability as a party to a bill is coextensive with capacity to contract. Read that sentence once again. I'm referring to section 22, subsection 1, which says capacity to incur liability as a party to a bill. So capacity to incur liability as a party to a bill is coextensive with capacity to contract, which in simpler words means capacity to contract in normal laws of contract is directly applicable to bills of exchange ordinance, right? Then it goes to subsection 2, where such capacity is to be determined by the law of Sri Lanka, it shall be determined by Roman Dutch law as administered in Sri Lanka, subject to the provisions of any enactment affecting that law. Now, before we analyze the contents and the effect of this section, what is Roman Dutch law? These things you have already done. But I want you all to tell me, what is Roman Dutch law? If you all want to unmute and say, that's completely fine. I don't know whether you can unmute or not, but what do you mean by Roman Dutch law? Participate in the class. මොනවද Roman Dutch law කියන්නේ? What is Roman Dutch law? Anyone? Tarini? Isuri? No idea what is Roman Dutch law. It's the common law of Sri Lanka. Very good, Tarini. It's the common law of Sri Lanka. From whom did we receive Roman Dutch law? From whom did we receive the Roman Dutch law? From the Dutch. Yes, from the Dutch we received Roman Dutch law, and like you all said, it's the common law of Sri Lanka. To date, it is applicable. In 1896, when the English came, I don't know whether I explained this to you, they brought in certain laws, English. What they said was, at that time, we had Roman Dutch law with us. They said, we are not going to change anything. In the sense, you keep the Roman Dutch law what you already have. From English to the Sri Lankans, the Ceylonese then, right? We will bring in new laws. You will be governed by the laws that we bring, which is the English law. Wherever the English law doesn't cover any particular aspect of it, you will be governed under Roman Dutch law. Therefore, Roman Dutch law became our, we call it our residuary law, avashesha nitiyak una, right? Became our residuary law, also known as our common law, right? All of us are governed under Roman Dutch law. So insofar as capacity is concerned, right now, we all know by now, bills of exchange ordinance, sales of goods with ordinance, and all these are brought in by the English, enacted under the British ruling. So these are governed under the English law. However, there are certain areas, for an example, section 22, subsection 2, they themselves said, where such capacity, so with regard to capacity, they are saying capacity to contract coexist with the capacity to incur liability in a bill of exchange. Then goes on to say, where such capacity is to be determined by the law of Sri Lanka, right? Capacity to contract is to be determined by the laws of Sri Lanka. It shall be determined by Roman Dutch law as administered in Sri Lanka, subject to the provisions of an enactment affecting that law. So here, keep in mind that Roman Dutch law supersedes English law on capacity with regard to checks, right? What is the legal age you would get or have capacity to enter into contract? What is the legal age in Sri Lanka? 18 and above. Kawuda kiyanne? Who says it's 18? Your answer is correct, but why do you say, based on what are you saying that one would receive capacity at the age of 18 and above? With what? By what? You know the particular law. It's called the Age of Majority Act. Age of Majority Act, right? Age of Majority Act says you become a major at the age of 18. All right? Great. Now, right. So, in Sri Lanka, subject to the provisions of enactment. If there is any doubt as to the capacity, of person to draw a bill of exchange, the doubt must be resolved by applying Roman Dutch law rules, right? So when you say, and at the same time, you also need to understand there are certain personal laws as well, which affects the capacity. So not only Roman Dutch law. What are the personal laws that we have? What are the personal laws that we have? Personal Canadian law. Me okkoma Canadian law. Muslim law. Tesavalame. Right. And some Mukwas laws. I don't know, but they say that there will be one country, one law, and eventually all these laws will be unified, and there will be one law which governs everyone. Now, which you have already studied by now, there are certain restrictions imposed on the parties whom govern under such particular personal laws, like their capacity to contract, etc., etc. For example, Tesavalame you take a woman or a female person, irrespective of the age, a married person is considered a minor, right? Is considered as a minor, right? And no such rights, and you have to get the consent of the husband, etc. So, with regard to capacity of a bill of exchange, we say it is governed under Roman Dutch law plus, right? So, it says you can see that subject to the provisions of any enactment affecting that law. So, Tesa Valame law would affect the provisions of the Roman Dutch law. Why? Tesa Valame law says for a married woman, for her to enter into a contract, the consent of her husband is required, right? So that supersedes insofar as Roman Dutch law is concerned. However, Roman Dutch law supersedes English law is concerned insofar as capacity of a party of a bill of exchange is concerned, right? Understood? Fine. Then another ingredient of a contract, of a valid contract, is consideration. We in Sinhala we call it pratishtava. And then there is this concept of valuable consideration, not just consideration. අපි කියනවා එකට අගනා ප්‍රතිෂ්ඨාව කියලා. Right? අගනා ප්‍රතිෂ්ඨාව. Right? Now, for consideration, it could be, it should be, we should be able to measure the consideration in terms of amount of money, right? Consideration would be paying someone or a forbearance to do something or not to do something, right? Then under English law, we require the concept of valuable consideration, which means this, what I just simply explained. I am giving you a bill of exchange of 50,000 rupees in consideration of you selling me your phone, right? Your mobile phone. Then that is called valuable consideration. Valuable consideration. Simply, I'm not going to go much detail on that. Then there is this concept called justa causa. One of you all have also commented on justa causa, which is a Latin term. In simple terms, that means just cause. Justa causa, just cause, which means that, you know, there should be a reasonable reason, or basically a reason for you to enter into a contract. Valuable consideration is not required. Example, classic example is the deed of gift. Tag your book again. So if it's a deed of gift, you don't require valuable consideration. A just cause is there. Tag your book, then the Deemanakaru, the donor wouldn't be receiving anything from the donee, right? Taggy හිමිකරුගෙන් මුකුත් ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ. From the donor, he is not getting anything. So why we call that as justa causa is, why is it given? It's given as a gift. ඒක හැබැයි ලියලා තියෙනවා for in consideration of love and affection. ආදරය, කරුණාව සහ දයාව ලැබීම නිමිත්තෙන් තමයි මේක දෙන්නේ. ඒක ලැබීම නැවතුනොත්, then consideration is not there. It's not valuable consideration. It's justa causa. Right? Then we are going to discuss about the different parties of a bill of exchange. Right? Different parties of a bill of exchange. Right. Let me Let me draw a check. Right? Different parties. You get the let's say date is today's date, Abhidham. 20th. Right. Pay 50,000. Right. Only. Let's say pay Kamal Pereira Obiara rupees 50,000 only. Right? Amal Fernando. Right? අපි කියමුකෝ this is a current, this, let's say this bill of exchange is a check, commercial bank checking. අනිත් බැංකුව අය තරහ වෙන්න එපා, අපි එක එක බැංකුවල නම් ගමු. හරිද? Right? Current account number something. Right? So wait until it will load up. Right. Now we can identify certain parties to this bill. Right? Now before identifying, list down the parties that you know, because some of you all are already bankers. List down who are the parties to a bill of exchange. List them down. Who are the parties to a bill of exchange? Drover. Drovey. තව pay. Beara. Good. තව කවුද? One more. Banker. We will see. Right. So here, in this particular what do you call example, who is the drover? Who is the drover here? . In that example which I showed you, who is the drawer? So you have Commercial Bank of Ceylon PLC, you have Kamal Pereira, and you have Amal Fernando. Amal, right. Amal Fernando is the drawer. So the person who draws the bill of exchange is called the drawer. Turn to section 55 of the ordinance. Section 55. Liability of the drawer. It speaks of the liability of a drawer. Right? The drawer of a bill by drawing it. So, Munada Venne, once a drawer draws a bill, what happened to him? What happens to him? Right? Engages, once the drawer of a bill by drawing it, engages that on due presentment it shall be accepted and paid according to its tenor. And that if it be dishonored, he will compensate the holder or any endorser who is compelled to pay it, provided that the requisite proceedings on dishonor be duly taken. මොනාද මේකින් කියන්නේ අර මෙතන holder කියලා කියන්නේ කාටද? bearer. Bearer is the person who holds the bill, who is in possession of the bill, right? So wherever a drawer draws a bill, he is liable that and he needs to ensure that on due presentment of that bill for payment, right, the person who is holding it or the payee, whoever receives payment to it, right, and if it is dishonored, he will compensate the holder for that amount, right? Keep that in mind. Then who is the drawee of this? The drawee of this check. Drawee. What? Drawee of the check. Okay. Here, one thing I could, digest would be to at least if you give an incorrect name, which is here, I wouldn't mind really. But if you say something which is not even totally or remotely connected to this, then of course it's the issue. Right? Where does BOC comes into the picture? Drawee is the person on whom the bill is drawn. Coming back to section 3. What is section 3? The definition of a bill of exchange. An unconditional order in writing. Remember that? Unconditional order in writing. Come back to definition. An unconditional order in writing addressed by one person to another. Addressed by one person to another. Signed by the person giving it. The person giving it, we call it the drawer. Right? Requiring the person to whom it is addressed to. The person whom a bill of exchange is addressed to, we call him or her or the entity as the drawee. අපි මෙතන විධානයක් දෙන්නේ. We give an order, unconditional order to some other person to pay this amount on your behalf to somebody else, right? So the person who the order receives, who receives the order is called the drawee, right? Here the drawee is none other than commercial bank. That's one difference of a bill of exchange to that of a check. Check is always drawn on a bank, right? All bills of exchange are rather, all checks are bills of exchange, but not all bills of exchange are checks, right? So you keep that in mind. Right. Then, when we are in the process of understanding this, go to section 53 of your bill of exchange. Now, this we are talking about the liabilities of the parties. Section 53 speaks of something else. A bill of itself does not operate as an assignment of funds in the hands of the drawee, available for the payment thereof. And the drawee of a bill who does not accept as required by this ordinance is not liable on the instrument. Mika Balan, do you read this sentence once again? Section 53, please read. So basically, section 53 says a bill of exchange by itself does not operate as an assignment of funds in the hands of the drawee available for the payment thereof. Basically, there may be a bill of exchange, right? Whatever, right? There may be a bill of exchange. Just because the drawer writes a bill of exchange does not by itself have any liability on the drawee. The drawee's liability arises only when the particular bill of exchange is presented in accordance with the rules of presentment, and he is presented with that bill of exchange. Then only his liability starts. Otherwise, he is not liable on the bill of exchange, right? If the drawee accepts the bill, right, his liability starts. So if he accepts the bill, who anyway, insofar as the bills of exchange ordinance is called, when the drawee accepts the bill, he is also known as the acceptor. Acceptor. Okay. The acceptor, once he accepts the bill, he is precluded from denying to a holder in due course the existence of the drawer, the genuineness of his signature, and his capacity and authority to draw the bill. Example, a customer, let's say, now we are taking checks as an example all the time. That doesn't mean bill of exchange only is what you call particular only to checks, right? Because it's the most common thing. We are taking it as an example. So he comes and gives you a check, right? Drawn on your bank. Let's say, Pigamu then BOC, cash check, or payable to the bearer. What would the teller do in such a thing? He would take it and see whether that is drawn in order. No, he would take it. See if it's signed properly. He would tally the signatures in the system because it's drawn on the bank house check, right? And then see what can be done. And once he accepts to pay, he can't deny that. He can't deny that. He has to pay on that, right? Then the liability, once you accept, the drawee accepts, that is the timeline where the drawee or the bank accepts the check. Moment he accepts the order, unconditional order made on the drawee or the acceptor, right? Then there is another person, another party to the contract, bill of exchange. We call him the endorser, INDORSER. But in common parlance for your bankers like you all, you are more used to use the word endorse, right? But the actual and the correct meaning of not the meaning, pronunciation and the term is endorsing. Endorsing, that's more of the legal sense, but that doesn't mean that the term endorser is wrong. But here, insofar as this is concerned, we will use the term endorser and endorsement, right? Basically, what is the term endorser means, right? Yeah, this is something to do with the English and the different types of languages, right? Endorse means to write one signature or to sign on the back of a document and thus give you approval or sanction to that document. That is basically what it means. Go to section 2. Section 2 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. Hmm. Section 2, that the interpretations, it speaks of endorsement. Endorsement means an endorsement completed by delivery. So merely signing a bill of exchange on its back will not constitute legal endorsement. It needs to be delivered after endorsing it, right? These two things must be fulfilled. If you endorse it and put it in your drawer, it's not a valid endorsement. If somebody else took it, these are valid legal arguments, right? If somebody else took it and tried to encash it, and once he encashes it, and the endorser says that's not valid endorsement because I did not, there is no delivery. It was in my drawer, and if he can proves it, then there is no valid endorsement. It has not gone through, right? Keep these are essential things that you need to keep in mind. So endorser, how does that occur, right? Now, once in a bill of exchange, you say pay so and so. Api මේකට යමුකෝ. Yeah, pay Kamal Pereira or Bear, rupees 50,000 only. Here, let's say Kamal Pereira could be the endorser. If he could say, he turns the check aside on the other side, and he gives another order to the bank by endorsing it. He can give a blank endorsement, or else he can write a name. If he writes a name, the party whose name he has written becomes the payee. Now here he is the payee. Kamal Pereira is the payee. But the payee, if moment he endorses, he becomes the endorsee. And if he writes a name, that person becomes the payee. But if he doesn't write a name and endorse it, it becomes payable to the bearer, right? Understand? Or maybe payable to him, whatever that is the case. Section 55.2. Section 55.2. Go to section 55.2. It provides for the liability of an endorser by what happens when you endorse it. The endorser of a bill, by endorsing it, engages that on due presentment it shall be accepted and paid according to its tenor, and that if it be dishonored, he will compensate the holder of a subsequent endorser who is compelled to pay it, provided that the requisite proceedings on dishonor be duly taken. Can you all see this pattern? Before this section, the subsection 1, this is similar to the drawer's liability under subsection 1. Subsection 1A. Right? So once an endorser endorses, right? Once an endorser endorses, he comes into the shoes of the liability of the drawer as well. It doesn't mean that the drawer's liability is taken out. No, he is also liable, but the endorser is also liable, right? Endorser is also liable. So endorser also assumes the responsibility somewhat similar to the drawer. Keep that in mind, right? By endorsing it, he is precluded from denying to the holder in due course the genuineness and regularity in all respects of the drawer's signature and all previous endorsements, right? So he is also liable on the endorsements. Okay. Right. Any questions up to now? Any questions? No. Right. You sure you don't have any questions, right? Okay, fine. Let's move on to the next step. Now we are going to discuss about different types of holders of a bill. Check කියලා වුණත් හිතා ගන්න කමක් නැහැ. That's issue, no issues. Go to section 2 interpretation. Section 2 interpretation in BOE. Right. Holder means the payee or endorsee of a bill or note who is in possession of it. Right. සන්තකේ තියෙන්න ඕනේ. Right. Or the bearer thereof. තමාගේ සන්තකේ තියෙනවා රැගෙන එන පුද්ගලයා සන්තකේ තියෙනවා. Payee or the endorsee of a bill or note who is in possession of it. Right? Or bearer thereof. Right? So it could be the original payee or the endorsee. Original payee here, it's you can see Kamal Pereira. But he endorses it to somebody else and that person becomes the endorsee. And that and if the check is in his possession, he is the holder of a bill. Now, holder of a bill is not the only thing. The law provides the protection and the right to sue any other person, not only to a mere holder, but a holder in due course. Then holder කෙනෙක් කියන්නේ ධාරකයෙක්, right? The holder of a bill. Holder in due course is the entity or the person who would assume all the rights to sue on the bill. සිංහලෙන් අපි කියන යථාකාලී ධාරකයා කියලා. යථාකාලී ධාරකයා. You go to, I will explain more about this. We'll go to section 29. Right? Holder in due course. A holder in due course is a holder who has taken a bill, complete and regular on the face of it, under the following conditions. Namely, A, that he became the holder of it before it was overdue and without notice that it had been previously dishonored, if such was the fact. Secondly, that he took the bill in good faith and for value, and that at the time the bill was negotiated to him, he had no notice of any defect in the title of the person who negotiated it. මොනවද මේක කියන්නේ? Read that sentence, particular section once again, subsection 1. Read it. Take a couple of minutes and read that. Very slowly read that because this is very important. Holder in due course. Read this. A holder in due course. So these two conditions must be fulfilled in order for a person to have all the legal rights of a holder in due course. That he became the holder of that particular, let's say, we will of that bill, right? Before it was overdue, and without notice that it had been previously dishonored. So he doesn't know, has no knowledge of the previous. He took the bill in good faith. He took the bill in good faith without any notice of dishonor, previous dishonor, and for value. He gave, there's a, what do you call it, consideration that was passed, right? And without any notice to him that there is a defect in title of that particular bill. අපි ඊට පස්සේ යනවා subsection 2. Subsection 2 says, in particular, the title of a person who negotiates a bill is defective within the meaning of the ordinance when he obtained the bill or the acceptance by fraud, duress, or force and fear or other unlawful means, or for an illegal consideration. Right? Or when he negotiates it in breach of faith, or under such circumstances as amount to a fraud. Now, read that once again. There are certain elements which is mentioned there. Title of a person, how would the title of a person to a bill becomes defective, right? Within the meaning of this ordinance, after what happens, right? If he obtains that bill by fraud, vanchavakin eka gattana, that's wrong. By duress, right? Anisi balapam karla. Gattana, that's duress. Or force, balahatkare, liya gattana, right? Baya karla, tatiganvamin, or with fear, instilling fear, or other unlawful means, or for illegal consideration. These are some basic elements of a validity of a contract, right? You know by now, when we read about the capacity of the parties as well as consideration, that it goes hand in hand with regard with the English law concepts, right? So this is a person who has not done anything of this. We are talking about HDC, holder in due course. Yata Kalidarakya. A holder, whether for value or not, who derives his title to a bill through a holder in due course, and who is not himself a party to any fraud or illegality affecting it, has all the rights of that holder in due course as regards the acceptor and all parties to the bill prior to that holder. Now, මෙන්න මේක තමයි මේ කියන්නේ, right? Show this. Right? So you get the drawer. We have the drawer, right? Then we have the pay. මෙහෙම දාමුකෝ. Right. Drawer. Pay. Endorser. Holder. In due course. Right. This is what it is. අපි කියමු, let's say Amal Fernando. writes a check in favor of Krishan Pereira, right? Or to the bearer. So what did Krishan Pereira do? Krishan Pereira endorsed the bill in favor of Krishan Pereira endorsed the bill in favor of Shenali Lianage, right? Amal Fernando is there. Then who's the drawer of the check? Pay in that check is named as Krishan Pereira, right? And so Krishan Pereira endorsed the check. Check එක තියෙන්නේ මෙහෙම වගේ කියමුකෝ. Right? Pay. Krishan Pereira something, no? Amal Pereira. $50,000. Right? So once that check so Krishan Pereira received this check. You all of you all can see that window, right? Just can one of you all confirm that you all can see this? Right, great. Now, this is the rear side of the check. This is payable to Krishan Pereira or bearer. What does Krishan Pereira do? So Krishan Pereira said, pay Chenali Lienege, and then he signs as Krishan Pereira. So here the drawer is Amal Fernando, pay is Krishan Pereira, who endorsed the check, who then that pay becomes the endorser, is still Krishan Pereira, and after that he endorsed it in favor of Shenali Lienege, who becomes the endorsee and gives it. Matakada endorsement? Endorsement by delivery. Endorsement by delivery only endorse plus delivery becomes endorsement. And then Krishan Pereira signs it, endorses it, and delivers it to Shenali Lienege. At this point, who is the holder? Who is the holder now of this check, of this bill? Who is the holder of the bill? who is the holder of the bill? Yes. Who is the holder? At this point, Shenali is the holder. Shenali Lienige is the holder of the bill. Right? As per section right? We will go to section 30. Not 30. So that person is the holder of the bill. And also, as per section 29, which we discuss as holder in due course. Api කියමු in this Amal Fernando wanted some, let's say, okay, he bought a phone from Krishan, gave this 50,000 check to Krishan, right? So what did Krishan do? Krishan, Shenali is an interior designer. Krishan wanted to get his house designed, interior designed by Shenali. What did he do? As an advance payment, he wanted to give 50,000 to Shenali. So he paid. What he did, he doesn't have to go and pocket out cash or anything. This is the beauty of bills of exchange. What did he do? He took this piece of paper. What is this piece of paper? Bill of exchange, or we call it as a check. Here, he turned it to the other side. In the rear side, he said, patiently leaning. He said, I don't want this 50,000. If I take it and 50,000, I have to pay anyway pay to Shenali. So, might as well write Shenali's name and endorse it and give it to Shenali. Right? So, Shenali, in discharging of her duty, professional duties, she took this as an advance payment and started off her work. Now, insofar as section 29 is concerned, Shenali is the holder of the bill as well as the holder in due course. යථාකාලී ධාරකෙක් නිකම්ම නිකන් ධාරකෙක් නෙමෙයි යථාකාලී ධාරකෙක්. What if Shenali now here she took the bill in good faith, value for money, right? Took the bill in good faith, section 29, holder of it before it was overdue. So it's within the time period. We are assuming that no notice of previous dishonor. She doesn't know anything about it or anything for that matter. And negotiated this. There is no defect in the title without any fraud, duress, or force or other unlawful means, and or for illegal consideration. This is a legal consideration in good faith. So she becomes a holder in due course, right? But if she had any of those elements in her mind, duress, fraud, or anything, for an example, if she was impersonating as an interior designer, right? Or else, just imagine she's an accountant. Krishan wanted Shenali to do an independent audit on his books. Then, as a retainer payment, she took this 50,000. But Shenali, who, let's say, impersonated of an accountant, she is not actually an accountant, she took this check of 50,000, then she is not a holder in due course. They are not. Holder in due course comes as a result of those attributes are there. Only when those attributes are there, right? So just imagine here, Shenali had those attributes and she is a holder in due course. Then what can Shenali do? What can Shenali do with this bill? What are the things she can do with this bill? What can she do with this bill? Practically, really, what can she do? What can Shenali do with this bill or check? Think and type and share with me. What can she do with this bill? What can she do? I want you all to participate, please. Now, Shenali is the holder in due course. Or basically, she is the holder. She is the bearer of this bill now. What can she do with this bill? What are the different things that she can do? Tell me. Tarini, Kaushala, Ninoli. What can she do with this bill? Isuri, deposit it in the bank. Yes. What else? Good answer, Kaushala. What else can she do? Only deposit it in the bank. Can't she do anything other than that? Hmm? No? There are about 60 students here. Invest in share market. It can be encashed if it is not crossed. Good. What else? What else? That's what I want. Pay to someone else. She can endorse it again. Yes. Why not? She can. She can endorse it. So what does Shenali do? Shenali endorses it. Huh? Papi මෙහෙම බලමු. So Shenali endorses it, let's say. So if she doesn't want to endorse it, that's okay. That's also possible. Now here, Shenali is in the process of building her house, right? Then the contractor came asking for a part payment of 100,000. From 100,000, she paid her 50,000 cash, and then she endorsed this check. Shenali endorse and again endorse to Shenaya. Shenaya Lenigi. No. She endorse it to Rehan, let's say. What did Shenali do? Shenali wanted to pay 100,000 to the contractor, who is Rehan. So Shenali paid 50,000 in cash and took this check, endorsed it in favor of Rehan, who is the contractor, and gave it to Rehan. So what happened? Shenali, insofar as the previous transaction is concerned, she is the endorsee. Again, she became the endorser after endorsing it after Krishan. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? Shenali කියනවා pay Rehan ලියනගේ and she signs it as Shenali ලියනගේ. Right? So Rehan becomes the endorsee and also the bearer or the holder in due course now. Or maybe the holder. Let's say before holder in this one. Now, Shenali is the holder in due course. And moment she endorsed it to Rehan, he became the holder. He also gets all the benefits, rights arising from Shenali. So he also becomes a holder. Do you all understand the holder in due course? Who is a holder in due course? What happens when you become a holder in due course, etc.? Yes. So he becomes the holder in due course, holder for value. Any questions before I go proceed? Okay. Any others? You all want me to explain again, or one of you all have mentioned, but others? What exact area didn't you understand? Because it took some time in explaining this. So if you can tell me what particular area, Isuri, I would be more than happy to explain, because otherwise I would know which particular area you didn't understand. Others, can you all just because this is, I am handicapped in online sessions because I don't get the feedback very often as I used to get in the classrooms. So help me out. What particular area you all don't understand, then I can explain. If you don't understand, there's no point in me going further. Others? Others, are you all satisfied with, or you all understood, comprehended whatever that was mentioned? Any other area now? I will explain about Windows. Yeah, okay. Right. Now, coming back to this, drawer is the person who writes the check, right? Let's say, now, for explanation's sake, I will use the term check and not bill of exchange, right? I write a check. I take my checkbook and write a check. I am the drawer. I have this checkbook is from Nations Trust Bank, right? Then I write a check, and I am the drawer. The drawee is Nations Trust Bank, right? I write in favor of. I write in favor of anyone. Let's say I wanted to get my house painted by a contractor. I give as an advance payment. I give him a check of 50,000 rupees. So I am the drawer. The painter of the house is the payee, right? Drawee is the Nations Trust Bank, NTB. So when the painter takes that funds, or takes that check into his hand, he could do a couple of things. One thing is he can go to the bank and encash it. It's not crossed, payable to the bearer. He can encash it over the counter. He can go to any NTB branch and get the cash over the counter, right? So he's the payee. He goes to the drawee and says, "It is the drawee who has received the order from me. This order I give, pay this guy," and gives the check. So without going to the bank, the painter, he wanted to buy a vehicle. He has selected the vehicle and he wants to make a reservation payment of 50,000. What does he do? He endorses the check. He turns the check to the other side, writes the name of the payee, who is the seller of the vehicle, which he has reserved, which he is going to reserve. He went to United Motors, showroom, whatever, brand new vehicle, he wanted to reserve, pay a reservation payment. So he would say, pay United Motors PLC, and he signs as the signs underneath that. He initially is the payee. Now he endorsed it. Thus, him becoming an endorser, S-O-R, endorser. Endorsee here, S-E-E, endorsee here at this stage is who? United Motors. Understood that? Right. So, that process can be continued as per, so whoever who gets that bill, who becomes the possessor or the bearer of that bill, right? Who becomes the endorsee of that bill. If he or she, completes those ingredients, attributes, who has those, have those attributes as set out in section 29, holder in due course, right? He is named or considered as a holder in due course and has all the rights against all those parties in the chain which the check was negotiated. He or she has the rights against all those in that particular chain. So that is an endorsee. Can an order check be endorsed and pay someone else? Yes, absolutely can. Let's say here, අපි කියමු මෙතන තිබුණා කියලා pay Krishan Pereira or order. Now, if it was Krishan Pereira or bearer, any person can endorse this. Any bearer can endorse this. If it's order, only Krishan Pereira can endorse it. So your question is, order check, can an order check be endorsed and pay someone else? Yes. So what can Krishan Pereira do here? Let's assume for a moment that this is an order check. Let's assume this is an order check, right? Then at the rear side, what can he do? He can Krishan Pereira ho ohuge anaparidi gevanu රුපියල් 50000ක මුදල. Krishan Pereira ho anaparidi. Kage anaparidida? Krishan Pereira's anaparidi. So by the order of Krishan Pereira, if it's a bearer check, it need not necessarily be Krishan Pereira. It could be any bearer who is in possession of the check. So if it is Krishan Pereira or order, he has to himself endorse it. Right? There are two types of endorsements. One thing is endorsement to a particular person or endorsement in blank. If he endorses it in blank, it becomes payable to bearer. The order check becomes payable to bearer. මම ඒ දැන් අන්තිමට කිව්ව කතාව තේරුණාද? I think Nadun, I explained the question to your answer to your question. However, did you all understand what I mentioned at last now? An order check, if it endorsed in blank, becomes a bearer check. Everybody understood? Anyone who didn't understand, please do ask me now. I can explain. Because it's very important. These are highly technical areas that I need your 100% or 200% attention. Others? All right, I will explain again. Right? Okay. Now coming back to this example. Okay. We will say, take a new one. Right. Okay. There is this check. Pay. We will take pay Menoli Padmasiri. Or two types of check no, bearer checks and order checks. රැගෙන ඉන්නාට හෝ අන පරිදි. ඔය දෙකෙන් එකක් නේ තියෙන්නේ. තේරුණාද? Yes. bearer. Rupees 50,000. හරි. කවුද මේක කියන්නේ? මේක කියන්නේ ඉසුරි. Now we'll say Kaushala. Kaushala Fernando is saying. Don't worry, I'm not impersonating or forging your signature. Kaushala, for the purpose of this, I just mentioned it, right? Then, right. Who is the drawer of this check? Wait, it will load up. Who is the drawer? Right. Are we clear on that? Kaushala is the drawer. Yes, Shashini. What do you need to know? You can unmute and ask. Shashini, you have raised the hand. What's the question? Oh, she has left the meeting. Now, who is the Apikiyemu? This is Nations Trust Bank check. Arid NTB check. Who is the drawee then? Who's the drawee if it's an NTB check? Right, NTB is the check. Good. Right. Who is the payee? Payee. Menoli. Menoli. Right. Now, Kaushala signs this check, gives it to Menoli. Right. What can Menoli do with this check? What can Menoli do? What can she do? What can Menoli do? Menoli, what can you pay to someone else? Come the Menoli, how are you going to pay this to someone else? How are you going to pay? What do you do? Give other or get money. So one thing is sure, Menoli can go to NTB branch. This is not a cross check. Gives it over the counter. Does Minoli need to have a account with NTB for this? No, she doesn't. She can encash it over the counter, right? She can give it to the branch and get cash for that. So she can get money for that. If Menoli is giving this to someone else, what does she need to do? මොනවද Menoli කරන්න ඕනේ මේක වෙන කාට හරි දෙන්න නම්? Endorse it. She has to endorse it. මේ චෙක් එක කාගේද? දැන් who be I mean literally. For an example, Menoli's. For an example, she needs to endorse it and give it to somebody else. What if what will happen? Let's think like that, right? She wanted to give this to her mother, right? So for that, she had to endorse it. But now she was getting ready to go to work, and very busy day. She wanted to give 50,000 to her mother to pay someone else. She couldn't leave cash or anything. What she did was the check was inside her drawer. She somehow forgot to give that to her mother because there should be a payment to be made to someone else. She calls the mother and say, Mom, there is a check inside my drawer. You take it. Right? But she couldn't endorse it. Is that a problem now? She couldn't endorse it. She couldn't endorse at the back. Can the mother take the bill? Can the mother take the check and do anything about it now? Not anything about it, do anything with it. Minoli's mother Minoli took, okay, mom, take the check. It's in the drawer. මේ කාට හරි contractor කෙනෙක්ට pay කරන්න ඕනේ. You take 50,000, it's a 50,000 rupee check. Can she do anything? Can Minoli's mother do anything with the check? With Minoli's instructions? Yes or no? වැරදෙන්න හරි කමක් නැහැ කියන්න. Yes. Nadun. Yes. Kaushala, Visuri, all are saying yes. What can she do? What can Menoli's mother do now? With just a blank check, just like this, payable to Menoli. Menoli told to take the check without endorsing it. What can Menoli's mother do now? How to encash Nadun? Does her mother's name is written anywhere on the check? No. But how can Menoli's mother encash it? Your answer is correct. But tell, for benefit of the others, how? Since it's not crossed, she can cash it. Now, don't get complicated here. Don't involve crossings here, then you all will get confused with that. Not because it's crossed, not crossed. Because something else.
Since it's a bearer check?
Very good. Because it's a bearer bill. Very good. Because it's a bearer bill, it's completed by delivery. It's delivered with her instructions. It's payable to the bearer. Whoever who brings or bears the bill becomes the payee. It's either Menoli, Padmasiri, or bearer. Understood, everyone? Does everyone understand up to that part? Because it's a bearer bill, Menoli need not necessarily endorse it because anyway, whoever who bears the check becomes or can encash it or whatever. Right. මෙහෙම දැන් I'm going to change the facts a little bit. Little bit. Same scenario. But here, Kaushala gave Menoli 50,000 rupee check, which was now inside Menoli's drawer, is not a bearer bill, it's an order bill. May Siddhyama Una, Menoli went to work, remembered that 50,000 rupee payment needs to be made. She didn't endorse it or anything. Called the mother and asked her to take the check. Can the mother take the check and encash it or whatever, deposit or whatever? Why not? Because why? Because it's a order bill. මොකක්ද වෙනස වෙන්නේ? Where is the order now? Order of who? කාගේ order එකද? කාගේ අනද අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ? Whose order? Menoli's order needs to be there. How would Menoli order it? By endorsement. That's how Menoli can order. Make an order on the check. Right? She has to endorse it. If she doesn't endorse it, no one can use the bill. She has to endorse it. She has to. Menoli's mother is hypothetical. We say Miss Rita Fernando, Rita Padmasiri, right? For the Menoli, don't worry. This is only for the sake of this. I'm not baptizing anyone. Miss Rita Fernando. It's not a fancy name. It's just what came to my mind. So what did she do? At the rear side of the check, you can see how I'm very specific in using my vocabulary, rear side. These have been recorded also. What does Menoli do? Menoli turns it to the rear side, right? And she says, pay Miss Rita Fernando. And then Menoli signs it. Then Menoli becomes who? Earlier Menoli was the payee. Now Menoli is, wait for it, it will load up. Now Menoli became who? Very good. Menoli became the endorser. Who is the endorsee? Rita Fernando. Yes. Rita Fernando becomes the endorsee. Now, what can Miss Rita Fernando do with this check? What can she do with this check? How? How can she pay to? Yeah, she can deposit it. She can endorse it and pay to someone else. If she to pay someone else, she has to endorse it because this is an order bill. Right? She has to endorse it because still this is an order bill. Yeah. But what can she do? So let's say now Miss Rita Fernando, this is how she could endorse the bill. One thing is she can say pay the contractor, let's say Lakmal Hardware. Lakmal Pereira is the owner of the hardware, right? Pay Lakmal Pereira and Miss Rita Fernando signs. Then Miss Rita Fernando becomes the endorser and Lakmal Pereira becomes the endorsee. Still, this is a order bill. Understand? Wait. Do you all understand this now? So Miss Rita Fernando paid that to the hardware, Lakmal Pereira, Lakmal hardware, owner is Lakmal Pereira. She endorsed it, signed it, and said, pay Lakmal Pereira. Do you all understand this? Yes. Still, this is a order bill or a bearer bill. Order bill or bearer bill? This is an order bill. Pay Lakmal Pereira order. Now look at this. I'm going to change the facts a little bit. Now Miss Rita Fernando, without writing the name Lakmal Fernando, she did this. She just signed in blank. She just signed in blank. Then what happens? As a result of she signing in blank, that order bill became payable to the bearer. Understand? By signing in blank, that order bill became payable to the bearer. All of you will understand. That was one of the questions that majority of you all raised. Any questions up to now? I am very careful in proceeding in this. This is one of those areas which we takes quite a couple of several days to complete bills of exchange ordinance. Because some areas are highly technical, but once you know it, it's really entertaining. Any other questions up to now? Okay. Why do I say that? Turn to section 8 of Bills of Exchange Ordinance. Section 8. Now, section 8, subsection 1. When a bill contains words prohibiting transfer, I'm not saying negotiability, but transferability, or indicating an intention that it should not be transferable, it is valid as between the parties thereto, but is not negotiable. Right? That's about transferability. A negotiable bill may be payable either to order or bearer. අපි දැන් ඒක ගැන තමයි කතා කරන්නේ. That's what we spoke about just now. A negotiable bill is payable to the order or to the bearer. Third one, a bill payable to bearer which expressed to be so payable or on which the only or last endorsement is an endorsement in blank. So if the last endorsement is an endorsement in blank, if it's an order bill, it becomes payable to the bearer. So anything for that matter, if it's an endorsement in blank, it becomes payable to the bearer. Section 8, subsection 3. Okay? Clear? Right. We will go to the next section immediately after section 29, which is holder in due course. That is on certain presumptions, right? Presumptions of law. ඒ කියන්නේ පූර්ව නිගමනය කරන සාධක presumptions by law. Presumption of value and good faith. Value එකක් එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ මොනවද කියන්නේ ප්‍රතිෂ්ඨාවක් ලැබුණ බවත් good faith තිබෙන බව පූර්ව නිගමන නීතිය පූර්ව නිගමන තියෙනවා. Section 30. Now we were talking about the good faith and all of a holder in due course. Now section 30 says something like this. Every party whose signature appears on a bill is prima facie, means on the face of it, deemed to have become a party therefore value. If there is an issue, the party who is alleging that he is not a holder in due course should prove otherwise. But the law presumes whoever who holds a bill or a check is a holder in due course, unless someone else proves otherwise. Right? A party whose signature appears on a bill is prima facie deemed to have become a party therefore value. Every holder of a bill is prima facie deemed to be a holder in due course. සෑම ධාරකයෙක්ම බැලූ බැල්මට පෙනෙන පරිදි යථාකාලී ධාරකයෙක් යයි නීතිය විසින් පූර්ව නිගමනය කළයි. වෙන කෙනෙක් එම සාක්ෂි අභිබවා වෙනත් සාක්ෂි දුන්නු පරස්පර විරෝධී සාක්ෂි දීම මගින් ඔප්පු කර මිස සියලු ධාරකයන් යථාකාලී ධාරකයන් ලෙස නීතිය පූර්ව නිගමනය කරනවා. So every holder would be deemed as a holder in due course by law unless and otherwise proved by another party. But if in an action on a bill it is admitted or proved that the acceptance, issue or subsequent negotiation of the bill is affected with fraud, duress or force and fear or illegality, the burden of proof is shifted unless and until holder proves that subsequent to the alleged fraud or illegality, value has in good faith have been given for the bill. Now, see, the other party who is saying that this person is not a holder in due course should prove it. That's basically what this says. If not, he has to prove those ingredients where a holder in due course should have was not there. Right? That is very important. Presumption. All right. Understood? Fine. Right. Then you keep in mind with regard to the signatures, go to section 93. Signature of a bill is an essential ingredient to have liability on a check. If you haven't signed a bill, you are not liable on the bill. Right? Let alone a drawee, you are not liable on the bill. We go to section 93(1). Whereby this ordinance, any instrument or writing is required to be signed by any person. It's not necessary that he should sign it with his own hand, but it is sufficient of his signature is written thereon by some other person by or under his authority. Right? In case of a corporation whereby his ordinance, any instrument or writing is required to be signed, it is sufficient of the instrument or writing be sealed with the corporate seal, but nothing in this section shall be construed as requiring the bill or note of corporation to be under seal. Right? Basically, you need to sign it. If you haven't signed it, you are not responsible for that. Right? And if somebody else is signing the bill as an agent of someone else, he needs to clearly indicate that he is signing for and on behalf of that person as an agent. Otherwise, he will be personally liable on the bill if he signs it. Right? Then we come to section 31(2). We just spoke of section 30. We'll discuss section 31(2). Now, section 31(1) says a bill is negotiated when it is transferred from one person to another in such a manner as to constitute the transfer, the holder of the bill. We spoke of that. A bill payable to bearer is negotiated by delivery. Right? Payable to the bearer is negotiated by bill delivery. That previous example of you, Menoli, telling her mother, take delivery of this. That is what this says. Is negotiated by delivery. A bill payable to the order is negotiated by the endorsement of the holder completed by delivery. We discussed both of these. Now, if a bill payable to bearer is negotiated by delivery, the fact that the signature is forged is irrelevant because it's payable to the bearer, negotiated by delivery. In case if a bill payable to the order, a forged or unauthorized signature is wholly inoperative. Right? Those such signatures have no rights that can be obtained. Right? I will explain further. With regard to forged or unauthorized signatures, turn to section 24, which provides for forged and unauthorized signatures. Subject to the provisions of this ordinance, where a signature on a bill is forged or placed thereon without the authority of the person whose signature it purports to be, the forged or unauthorized signature is wholly inoperative. Right? And no right to retain the bill or to give a discharge therefore or to enforce payment thereof against any party thereto can be acquired through or under that signature, unless the party against whom it is sought to retain or enforce payment of the bill is precluded from setting up the forgery or want of authority. So basically what this says is, if it's a forged or unauthorized signature, that bill is inoperative. Right? If it is not your signature and you prove it, then that's it. Right? Then that's it. He can absolve from liability on the bill. Right? If it's forged or this thing. Understood? Yes, any questions thus far? All right. I will leave. We have a couple of minutes left before winding up. But if you have any questions, I will be covering only until that part until today, because these are sensitive areas, complex areas. We need to go very slowly. If you want any clarifications, take this time to ask me any questions that you have. It will take about another at least 2 more days to cover bills of exchange. This becomes interesting only if you see the practicalities and the practical side of it, how you use it in the real world. It's amazing. This is personally my favorite area, because the amount of things that goes wrong, that would go wrong, that could go wrong. If you all have no questions, we can wind up now. If you have, you can of course send it to me through route it through IBSL, and I will attempt to answer those. So if you don't have any questions, we can wind up. Thank you very much. Have a lovely afternoon.